If you're a teenager carrying extra body fat and you want to lose weight, everyone's going to tell you the same boring stuff. Eat less and move more. And put simply, they're right. At a very basic level, that advice will help you lose fat, so feel free to click off now. However, there is more going on beneath the hood. The answer involves your growth plates, your sex hormones, and a mechanism that works completely differently depending on whether you're a guy or a girl, and it is critically under-discussed. Today, we're going through all of it. The actual science of teen weight loss, why it matters more during these years than any other point in your life, what you're risking if you do it wrong, and what the research actually says about the right approach. Part 1, the guys. Let's start with something most people don't know. Your body fat is not just stored energy sitting around doing nothing. Fat tissue is a functioning organ. It produces hormones, sends signals, and has a direct line to your reproductive and growth systems. One of the things fat cells do, especially relevant for teen guys, is produce estrogen. Your fat cells contain an enzyme called aromatase. Aromatase converts testosterone into estrogen, so the more fat you carry, the more aromatase you have, meaning the more conversion happens. An overweight teenage guy is running around with meaningfully higher estrogen and lower test levels than a lean guy his age. You might be asking, so what? Why do I even care? Well, your bones grow from structures called growth plates, the cartilage area near the end of your bones where new bone is constantly being formed. They stay open through childhood and adolescence, and when they fuse shut, you stop growing. Done. The hormone that causes growth plates to fuse is estrogen. In both males and females, estrogen is the signal that closes the plates. We know this with near certainty from documented cases of men born without functional aromatase. They can't convert testosterone to estrogen, so the fusion signal never arrives. The growth plates stay open into adulthood. In one case in the literature, there was a guy still growing at 33 years old. So here's the chain. More fat means more aromatase, means more estrogen, leading to faster growth plate fusion and likely a lower adult height. But on the flip side, losing fat reduces aromatase activity, reduces estrogen, meaning your growth plates get more time to grow before they get the shutdown signal. Alright, so you might be thinking, I'll just lose all my fat and hit 6'2". I wish. Your body has a second trick up its sleeve. Aggressive calorie restriction suppresses IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, which is the actual signal your body uses to drive bone elongation. Growth hormone gets released, your liver converts it to IGF-1, and IGF-1 tells your growth plates to grow. No IGF-1 means no growth, even if the plates are still open. IGF-1 is very sensitive to calorie availability. Severe restriction tells your liver there's a shortage, and it cuts off IGF-1 output. Your body isn't going to invest in growing taller during what it perceives to be a famine. So, two forces, opposite directions. If you lose body fat too slowly, excess estrogen wins. Lose it too quickly, IGF-1 abandons you. So what's the solution? A moderate deficit. You reduce estrogen load while keeping IGF-1 functional. That's the net positive. If instead you crash dieted, you may slow the estrogen signal while simultaneously nuking the growth signal. You've just traded one problem for another. None of what I just said is an argument for staying overweight, but let's be clear, I am not trying to fat shame, and I have no clue what's going on with your personal situation. But from a zoomed out perspective, obese kids tend to be taller earlier in childhood because high insulin and elevated IGF-1 do accelerate initial growth. But then puberty hits earlier, estrogen spikes earlier, and growth plates fuse faster. They get a head start, then hit a wall, and end up with less total height gain overall. Beyond estrogen, excess fat also suppresses growth hormone pulses, drives insulin resistance, causes chronic inflammation that interferes with bone and muscle development, elevates your cortisol, and begins accumulating long-term metabolic damage during your formative years. Losing fat, done right, addresses all of that simultaneously. Part 2, the girls. The biology here is really different from what guys are dealing with, and the risks girls need to watch out for are different too. First, the fat-estrogen connection. For guys, fat tissue is the dominant estrogen source. Up to 85% of male estrogen comes from aromatase in fat cells. So, for a guy, losing fat has a direct, significant effect on estrogen. For girls, ovaries are the primary estrogen source, especially after childhood. Fat tissue adds extra on top, but it's not the main driver the same way it is in males. So the aromatase pathway that is so essential for guys is less dominant. That said, being overweight as a teenage girl still disrupts your hormonal environment in a major way, just through a different mechanism. Here's what the research shows. Obese girls hit puberty significantly earlier than their lean peers. One large study found girls with obesity experienced their first period nearly 9 months earlier than leaner girls, And that matters enormously for height. Because in girls, the growth spurt happens just before menarche. And once you've had your first period, the vast majority of your height growth is done. You're typically looking at 1 to 3 inches maximum after that point. So the chain for girls is more fat, elevated leptin and estrogen, earlier puberty, earlier menarche, meaning your growth spurt ends sooner, potentially lowering your final height. It's a different mechanism from guys, but it's the same direction of effect. For guys, the main risk of overdoing fat loss is crashing IGF-1, and that's real. But for girls, there's an additional and more serious risk with its own name, the female athlete triad. The triad is 3 things that happen together when calories drop too low. 1, low energy availability. There's simply not enough calories coming in to support normal body function, plus extra activity. 2, menstrual disruption. Your period becomes irregular or stops. That's called amenorrhea. It's your body shutting down what it deems non-essential systems for energy conservation. And 3, this one has perhaps the most serious long-term effect, low bone density. This is the one most people miss. Your period isn't just about reproduction. It's the main hormonal driver of bone formation in females. Estrogen from your cycle is what builds and maintains bone. When that period stops, estrogen drops, and bone density falls, with no obvious symptoms until something breaks. Here's why this is especially relevant for teenagers. Up to 90% of your lifetime bone mass is built by the time you finish high school. Your bones right now are at their most responsive to development. A teenage girl who suppresses her period through excessive restriction isn't just losing her period. She's permanently reducing her peak bone mass. Studies have found teenage girls with exercise-induced amenorrhea show bone density comparable to women in their 50s and 60s, and that bone loss is often irreversible. So the risk-benefit calculation for girls is even more tilted toward moderate, gradual fat loss than it is for guys, because the downsides of going too hard isn't just slowed growth. It's bone health damage that will hurt you for decades. If you think you're engaging with a moderate caloric deficit, but your period still stops or becomes irregular, that's your body telling you something is wrong. Take it seriously and talk to a medical professional, which remember, I am not. So, part 3. What does good fat loss look like for everybody? 1. Keep a moderate deficit. 2 to 500 calories below maintenance. That translates to about half a pound to a pound a week. This is the range where IGF-1 stays functional, muscle is preserved, and for girls, your period keeps running. And don't worry, if you're struggling with the cut, stay tuned. My next video coming out soon is all about the best practical cutting tips out there. 2. Lift weights. Now, contrary to popular belief, lifting weights isn't actually that effective for burning calories. If you want to burn extra calories, you're better off doing cardio or just walking more. But lifting preserves lean mass, stimulates growth hormone, keeps IGF-1 higher, and is one of the most powerful tools for bone density, directly driving bone mineralization in ways cardio doesn't. 3. Protein. You should be eating 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. This prevents muscle loss, supports your bone density, and helps with satiety. It's absolutely non-negotiable, especially in a deficit. 4. Sleep. And if you watched my previous sleep video, you already know this, but the majority of growth hormone is released during deep sleep. Cutting calories while sleeping 5 to 6 hours is actively working against yourself. Listen to your body and get at least 8 to 9 hours. This is when you really grow. But I'm going to keep it real with you guys. The research on how teen fat loss affects final height is still developing. The mechanisms are well established, but predicting the exact outcome for any individual involves way too many variables. Unstructured, haphazard dieting in teenagers is associated with increased risk of binge eating and long-term weight gain. If the way you're approaching food starts to feel obsessive, that's definitely worth taking a step back and maybe even talking to someone about it. And if you're already at a healthy weight, you shouldn't be watching this video for a reason to restrict further. This video is absolutely not that. Hopefully, you now understand the risks of unnecessary restriction during adolescence and the benefits of being at a healthy weight are minimal to none. Let's review. For guys, fat cells produce estrogen through aromatase. More fat, more estrogen, faster growth plate fusion, probably less height. If you try to get around that by crashing your calories, you also crash your IGF-1. What's the solution? A moderate deficit. For girls, excess fat accelerates puberty, triggers earlier menarche, and compresses the growth window. If you try to get around that, you risk the female athlete triad. You lose your period, you lose bone density, and a lot of stuff gets messed up. What's the solution? A moderate deficit. So if you're genuinely overweight and need to lose it for health reasons, here's the solution. Moderate deficit, lift, protein, sleep. And if this is the kind of content you're here for, and you're ready for my cutting tips video, subscribe and hit that bell. Muscle Maurice, signing off.